Welcome to the Vistage Podcast series. I'm Dave Nelson, a Vistage member since 2003, part of CEO Group 676 in Pittsburgh, and your podcast host. Every episode, we connect with extraordinary business leaders to get valuable ideas to apply in our own organizations. Today, I'm joined by Dave Mastovich, the founder and CEO of MASSolutions, a company that brings decades of experience in strategic planning, advertising, marketing communications, and sales management to their clients. Hey, Dave, welcome to the Vistage Podcast.
Dave, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, by the way, fellow Pittsburgher. So I believe last time we were doing a podcast, you were the host, and we were in your studio in downtown Pittsburgh.
Exactly. It was a good time, and now we're in the midst of a Stanley Cup that's going our way.
Well,
I had to get it in there.
I know. By the time somebody watches this, though, we'll either be the champions or, we don't want to talk about any other possible outcomes there. Well, today we're talking about marketing intel, but let me give just a quick introduction since most people are just meeting you for the first time, although I know you have more than 1 million listeners and readers with your own social media content. But early in his career, Dave led the marketing efforts for major healthcare and higher education players, and now for more than 2 decades, he's been helping CEOs improve their marketing ROI, or return on investment. Dave calls this no BS marketing, which I love. That just boils it right on down. Dave is the author of the book, Get Where You Want to Go Through Marketing, Selling, and Storytelling, and his blog, Light Reading, has been featured in over 50 media outlets with readership of more than 1 million. His podcast, No BS Marketing, engages business leaders in discussing how leadership and communication drive growth. Dave is also a Vistage member, CE447 here in Pittsburgh, and is a Vistage workshop speaker. So, Dave, let's start out with marketing intel. Maybe people haven't heard the term before. What is it, and how is it different from measuring something like customer satisfaction?
Dave, most companies don't really know and realize what they're missing by finding out what customers really think. Marketing intel really answers 3 key questions for you. How did your customers find you? Why did your customers choose you? Why do they stay or leave? And we do that through 3 major areas. The first thing we do, Dave, is we want to go out and talk to people that are involved with your company, that understand your products and your services. So we want to talk to current customers, but we also want to talk to past customers and wish list customers, maybe some referral sources, because even B2B companies have referral sources. And we also want to make sure we talk to some of your employees and even customers that maybe have left. And that's one piece of it, is doing interviews and gathering information. Another piece is we do assessments. We do a digital assessment of all your online and offline activity. We do a brand assessment. That tells you where you are and where you need to go from a message, a visual, and a brand standpoint. And we also can do secret shopping or mystery shopping, which actually does work for B2B as well as B2C. So those are the components, the major components of marketing intel.
Okay, so before we get deeper into it, what are the key lessons or points that you want our C-suite viewers to take away from today's podcast?
Great question. The first is, don't neglect a couple of key target audiences that often are neglected. One of your key target audiences is your employees. You need to talk to them and survey them and ask them what they see, think, feel, hear. So don't neglect employees, finding out what they think and also communicating to them and have them be de facto members of your marketing team. You also don't want to neglect referral sources. As I said, many people think of referral sources and they think of healthcare. That's absolutely true. It's totally predominant in healthcare. But we work with a lot of B2B companies that people refer to them. And you need to make sure you don't neglect the referral sources. First of all, ask people for referrals, but then find out why they refer to you. They'll answer those very same 3 questions that I mentioned earlier. So that's one major lesson. Another is, don't confuse a satisfaction survey with marketing intel. What it is we want to focus on loyalty over satisfaction. And that's what we're talking about with marketing intel. We can help companies get their customers to be more loyal as opposed to satisfied. and that's done through marketing intel.
Interesting. Now, one of the sort of brilliant ideas that you've already mentioned that I haven't thought of, that I'm guessing most people never do, you talked about in the survey process talking to, the wish list customers. I get that, but the former customers. I wonder how many people have ever actually gone out and talked to people who have left to try to understand why. And I mean, talk a little bit about that, because that seems like a really good idea. And what might you learn if you think about some of your client experiences in those kind of conversations?
It's the most difficult group to reach for our team. And we have a team of trained professionals, which I stress that having a third party ask the same question that you could ask yourself helps, because we're all more apt to talk openly to a third party. Doesn't mean you shouldn't still be asking the same questions yourself. You should still be asking the same questions yourself. But having a third party do it also helps. So it's hard because let's say you give us 10 past clients to call. We will reach out to them. We have a system that we use to do that. But even if we only get one, whereas current clients, we might get all 10. But even if you only get one past client, the insight is so significant. Some customers will say to me, that's so-and-so. We knew he was unhappy and he's a little bit difficult, or she's a little difficult. Could be true. We all have had difficult customers. I've been a difficult customer. But we have to help you sift through that, because they might tell us 5 things, and 1 or 2 were because they're a difficult customer. But 2 or 3 might be things that can help you change the game for your company.
Interesting. Yeah, that seems like a really good idea. And you say that it's often challenging to reach these people. Is that because the relationship no longer exists and they want to move on? They don't have an interest in helping a past supplier, perhaps?
Yes, I think there's all kinds of people, Dave, and I know you quite well, and you're a very open, transparent, and you want to help. I try to be that same way, and so I'm willing to tell people. But when I do, and when you have, sometimes you're the enemy. They take it out on the person who is giving the information. So that's what makes it tough. People are reluctant to come back and say, well, MASSolutions stunk on that project, Dave. You guys missed the boat on A and B. People don't want to tell you that, so then we wander aimlessly thinking, wonder why we lost that customer. All of us do that. We lose customers from time to time, and you're wondering why. So if you could get to talk to even 1 out of 5, you're going to glean some things that maybe the other 4 would have said as well.
Interesting, and that again really emphasizes the point of having a neutral third party do this. There's no, let's just say, history there, and I can imagine if you are an independent third party approaching me about a supplier that I've left, I'm going to be a little more comfortable, a little bit more open talking to you than I would say directly to them.
The same happens with current customers, and believe me, we've done marketing intel on ourselves at MASSolutions, and we continually do it, and it's amazing what satisfied and even loyal customers will say. Remember, I want us to talk about loyal customers over satisfied. Dave, we could take your best customer, and what you think, the 2 or 3 things that they'll say about dialogue or about you as a social media leader or as a Vistage speaker, you could take your best customers and they'll say things you didn't think. And sometimes it's great because they point out some real positives that you were taking for granted. But other times, we had one client that's used us for 10 different services, and they picked one of those 10, and they spent a small amount of their money on that one service, but that's the one that made the most impact. So we had to change how we were communicating, because we learned from current customers that they were telling us these things that we knew were valuable, but we thought they would rank lower. Same thing happens for our clients when we go out and talk to their customers.
Interesting. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the process. Is this typically done face-to-face, telephone, digitally? And also, do you work with your clients on formulating the questions or the topics that are going to be discussed? So that's really 2 different questions, but about process.
So the process is, I'll answer all of those because they're very good questions. The process is a combination. We tend to do our interviews on the phone for clients because it's more difficult to reach them. It doesn't mean we wouldn't gladly do some in person, and we do some in person, but the majority of the calls are telephone interviews for your current and past clients and even referral sources. However, we will meet with some. We try to do face-to-face with your internal senior leadership and middle management, which surprisingly they aren't on the same page as much as you would like, it's not necessarily even a bad thing. It's just what they see as the company's strengths often differ. So you have to get everybody in to do what we call messaging agreements, where we come back and say, here's what you're saying internally. It's a little bit different. What is the real story that you want to tell? And then we talk to all employees through a basic SurveyMonkey type tool where we ask only a couple of questions. You want to ask 2 or 3 qualitative questions as opposed to 10 quantitative questions. If you ask even one question, sometimes we'll do the survey with just one question because it increases the response rate and it gets you some valuable qualitative type information. So that's how we talk to employees, and then we talk on the phone to your customers and referral sources and past clients. But we also do some secret shopping if the client is interested in that, where we can actually have someone come in and be a potential client and nobody knows who it is, and we're able to glean information that way. And we also combine it with that assessment that I mentioned. So we start off doing the digital assessment and the marketing and branding assessment. So we're able to look at pretty much everything that we would find as a potential customer about your service. And we come back and tell you, here's what's consistent, here's what's inconsistent, here's what's difficult to understand, here's what's memorable. And so that assessment, the shopping, the interviews, the surveys are all combined as part of the marketing intel.
Interesting. And when you're talking to a current or a former customer, what type of person in that organization are you talking to? Are you going in at the top? Is it somebody who was in purchasing? Is it an end user? Or is it all of those?
The ideal way to do it is multiple people at a big client or a medium-sized client. So if you're working with a company that has multiple layers and you have someone from purchasing that handled the master service agreement, and then you have 2 or 3 people in a department that work directly with your team, those people. And then you go up to the senior level as well. So you might talk to 2, 3, 4 people in the same company if it's a larger sized client. If it's a smaller client or a past client, you might only be able to get to talk to one, and it could be the person that was most on the front line. We talk with the client and we make sure that's done based on that conversation. And we pretty much make a judgment call where we say this particular client probably needs 4 people spoken to. This one we might be able to get by with just 1.
Interesting. So marketing intel. As we were prepping, you mentioned the Hawthorne Effect. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the side benefits here.
Well, that from our management class in Management 101 talked about how when we feel we're being watched, we perform and tend to respond to being watched. One of the things that we ask our clients to do is we say reach out, and we have a system to do that a couple of different ways, not just one way, because we all communicate differently. So everything that we preach at MASSolutions with messaging is to have multiple touches, multiple touch points, ways to reach the customer. So we will go out and tell the customer, MASSolutions has been engaged because we value your opinion, we consider you a key stakeholder, and we want to learn from you. Every one of our hundreds of projects, we have this streak going, we're hoping it keeps going, every one of our hundreds of marketing intel projects has resulted in somebody who was contacted calling and buying something because it triggered a memory that, hey, they are pretty good and they're calling me. I haven't talked to them in a while. I do need that service. I do need that product. So that is a benefit that we don't guarantee, but it has happened every single time.
All right. Very interesting. Now, just out of curiosity, I want to throw a question out of left field. When you think about the hundreds of projects that you've done for clients, can you share an example of something that you or your team discovered in this marketing intel process that was a bit of a surprise to your client? What falls into that category, if anything comes to
There are a couple of my favorite ones. So one that really struck a chord with the client was they asked us to do the marketing intel. They asked us to talk to their key customers, past customers. They asked us to talk to vendors, referral sources, and they asked us also to shop their stores. And when you think of a furniture store, they tend to build these beautiful stores, a lot of glass. They often are up on the hill when you're going up past the mall. And you come to the furniture store, and they were going through some turnover problems at the time, and multiple times when we shopped the stores at various locations, You drive up there after all that advertising, that beautiful furniture, beautiful glass door, and on the door, on a piece of paper written in Sharpie marker with Scotch tape, says, "Help wanted." So we were able to come back to the CEO of the probably 100 stores and say, this is one of the findings, that you have to recruit in a different way. So it's a humorous story, but it really shows you to see and hear what your customers see and hear can be really powerful.
All right, that's a good example. So in closing, let me ask you to formulate a question aimed at our viewers. What would the question be that would really get them thinking about marketing intel?
If you could ask your customers and prospects who said no and customers that left you, what's the one reason other than price that you chose us or our competition? Would that be valuable to you?
That is very thought-provoking. I love that one. All right, well, Dave Mastovich, it was a delight speaking to you today. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
And folks, if you're interested in learning more about Vistage, please check out Vistage.com. It's a great way to take your business to the next level. Thank you for watching or listening, depending on your mode of operation, to this episode of the Vistage Podcast series. We hope that it helps you take your business to the next level.